Hi, I'm Mohsen, and I'm so excited to welcome you to The Seeking Soul. This podcast is a space where we explore topics like philosophy, spirituality, and literature, often from perspectives you may not have encountered before. As someone who grew up traveling, I've had the privilege of witnessing the deep similarities between cultures and people, even when mainstream narratives focus on what divides us. As an Iranian American, I've always felt to share the beauty, wisdom, and lessons from my Eastern heritage with my Western community, and vice versa. My hope is to be a bridge between these two worlds, fostering the sense of oneness and unity. With the help of AI, this dream feels more achievable than ever. Using documents and notes, I've provided with the link of the sources in the description. Along the way, you might encounter ideas that feel new, challenging, or even uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's the purpose of this space, to listen with empathy and approach every perspective with love and curiosity. Welcome to the Seeking Soul.
Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive into Erfan mysticism. We have some really interesting source material for this one.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a transcribed lecture and an explainer document.
It does.
Mm.
And I have to say, I'm already fascinated by this whole idea of exploring the human journey towards unity with the divine through this uniquely Islamic lens.
Right. And what's really cool is how these sources all seem to circle back to a few key themes.
Like what?
Well, we see a lot about the significance of Bismillah in the name of God, not just as like a phrase you say, but as a concept that kind of underpins this whole journey.
I see.
And then there's this interplay between Kathrat representing multiplicity, like the diversity of existence,
Okay.
and Wadat signifying unity, which seems to be what Irfan is all about, uncovering that underlying unity.
Right.
And of course, we can't forget the role of love and self-awareness.
Yeah. And what really struck me was how the lecture, it frames Erfan not as just some set of beliefs, but as a way of life.
Yeah.
Like, how do we actually put these principles into practice
Yeah.
in our everyday actions?
Yeah. Yeah. And the lecture starts in such an interesting way. It starts with Bismillah, but not in like a rote or habitual sense.
Yeah.
It's presented almost as a challenge. Like, are we really embodying that connection to the divine in our actions?
I get that. It's
Yeah.
like when we make a resolution to eat healthier
Yeah.
and then immediately reach for the donuts, it's easy to say the words, but aligning our actions with those words,
That's the hard part.
that's where the real work begins,
Yeah. It seems like Erfan is all about bridging that gap.
between intention and action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one concept that really stood out to me was this idea of the wudu of love.
Voodoo of love.
Yeah, it's presented as like a spiritual cleansing
Mhm.
to prepare for this journey towards unity.
That's an interesting concept,
Yeah.
especially when you think about the ritual ablution in Islam, taking that idea of purification and applying it to our inner selves. Like our hearts need cleansing before embarking on this spiritual journey.
Exactly. It's about preparing ourselves, mind and spirit, for this path. And the speaker uses a really vivid analogy to describe where this path leads.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
They describe humanity as being caught between angels and donkeys.
When I first read that, I thought I had missed something.
Uh-huh. It's not your typical spiritual imagery.
It's not.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, the more I appreciated the depth of it.
It's brilliant. It captures this internal struggle we all experience,
Oh.
you know? Part of us yearns for knowledge, purity, obedience, like the angelic nature.
Mm.
But then there's this other part, the donkey part, driven by our base desires and worldly attachments.
It's like we have an angel on one shoulder and a donkey on the other, always pulling us in different directions.
The speaker actually quotes the lecture directly. It says the third type is the human being, half angel and half donkey. It's such a powerful image. It highlights how Erfan, it doesn't say we should deny this struggle.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging it and learning to navigate this duality within us.
Okay, so that brings us to the story of Majnun and his camel.
Oh, yes, a classic metaphor for this journey.
Can you give our listeners a quick recap of the story?
Sure. So Majnun, he's deeply in love with Layla, consumed by this love. He decides to journey across the desert on his camel to be with her.
Okay.
But the camel represents his worldly attachments, his desires, his comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's constantly pulling him back towards what's familiar. delaying his journey toward Layla, who symbolizes the divine in this context.
I see. So it's not about physically abandoning our responsibilities or loved ones. It's about recognizing the attachment that hold us back from seeking unity with the divine.
Erfan suggests that true detachment, it's about shifting our relationship to those things.
Finding a balance between our worldly engagements and our spiritual aspiration.
Exactly. And this leads to another important theme. The sources highlight our modern obsession with information.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel that we're drowning in data.
But are we thirsting for wisdom?
It's like we have access to all the information in the world, but we're losing sight of what truly matters.
The speaker makes a really interesting distinction between information knowledge and wisdom.
Okay.
They refer to these as ilm, knowledge, and wisdom.
So ilm is like raw data.
Yeah.
The facts and figures.
Right. And then knowledge is about taking that information and organizing it, creating a framework for understanding.
But that's still not enough, is it?
Because then we have wisdom, which is about integrating that knowledge into our very being.
So it's not just what we know intellectually.
It's about embodying that knowledge, letting it shape our character, our actions, our way of life.
It's a challenge to the way we often approach learning.
It is. It's about moving beyond simply acquiring information and striving for a deeper, more holistic understanding.
That permeates every aspect of our lives.
It prompts us to ask ourselves, are we truly wise or just well-informed?
That's a question I'm definitely going to be pondering.
Me too. If Erfan is about this journey towards a more unified life, what does that actually look like?
Yeah. What are the hallmarks of someone who's achieved this state of unity?
The sources describe a unified being called an arif, is someone who's attained a state of profound unity with the divine.
Okay.
Perceiving the interconnectedness of all things and living in alignment with that understanding.
So it's more than just like inner peace or something.
It's not just a vague feeling. There are specific qualities. They experience a heightened sense of joy, a deep alignment between their thoughts and their actions, and a liberation from fear and sorrow.
That sounds pretty appealing.
It's like a blueprint for a truly fulfilling life.
But what does it actually mean to experience everything as an act of worship?
That's a beautiful concept. Imagine washing dishes not as a chore, but as a mindful act of purification, acknowledging the blessing of clean water and nourishment.
I see.
It's about bringing that level of awareness and intention to every aspect of life.
Recognizing the divine presence in every moment.
Exactly. And that's the transformative power of Erfan.
Seeing the world through that lens of unity.
Recognizing the sacredness of all creation and living in harmony with that understanding.
That's powerful. And what I really appreciate is that the sources, they don't just leave us with these lofty ideas.
No, they give us practical steps to help us embark on this journey towards unity.
And it's not all about seclusion and rituals. There are things that resonate with anyone seeking a more meaningful life.
Absolutely. The steps outlined are surprisingly relatable, even for someone who might not be particularly religious.
So let's dive into these steps, starting with this idea of seeking a spiritual guide.
Or as sahibi dillo, as it's referred to in Erfan.
It's like having a mentor for your spiritual journey.
Exactly. Someone further along the path who can offer guidance, wisdom, support.
This concept of mentorship is so valuable in any area of life, whether it's our careers, relationships, spiritual pursuits.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to navigate this journey alone.
Seeking wisdom from those who've walked the path before us.
Exactly. And along with seeking guidance, Erfan emphasizes the importance of our companions. It highlights how much our social circles influence our spiritual growth.
You know, it's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right. Choosing our companions wisely, surrounding ourselves with positive, uplifting influences.
It's crucial for creating a supportive environment for our spiritual development.
It's about recognizing that our social connections, they can either nourish our souls or deplete them.
And speaking of nourishment, the sources highlight the value of insightful books.
Kutub Akub.
It's not just about reading for pleasure.
It's about actively seeking out texts that offer wisdom, guidance, inspiration for our spiritual journey.
A curated reading list for the soul. I love that.
And sometimes the best way to nourish our souls is to step away from the books.
And reconnect with nature.
Tabiat.
I'm a big believer in the power of nature. Whether it's a walk in the woods, listening to the ocean, just appreciating the beauty of a sunset. Spending time in nature can be so grounding.
It's about remembering that we're part of something much larger than ourselves.
That interconnectedness.
Connecting with nature reminds us of our place, in the grand scheme of things.
It's a powerful reminder. And, speaking of interconnectedness, the sources also highlight engaging with art, whether it's music, painting, dance, whatever speaks to you.
Allowing yourself to be moved, inspired, transported by beauty.
It's like art provides a glimpse into the realm of the divine.
Reminding us of the beauty and harmony that lies beneath the surface.
And finally, Erfan emphasizes performing good deeds.
Kirkub.
It's not about doing good things for recognition or reward.
It's about cultivating a spirit of generosity and selflessness.
As an expression of our interconnectedness. When we act with kindness and compassion, we contribute to a more harmonious world.
We're not isolated individuals.
We're threads in the tapestry of life.
And our actions, they can either strengthen or weaken that fabric.
So Erfan offers this holistic approach to living.
It encompasses our spiritual practices, our relationships, our intellectual pursuits, our connection to nature.
It's about aligning our actions with our highest aspirations.
Striving to embody the qualities of an Arif in every aspect of our lives.
But if this path is open to everyone, what makes true Erfan so rare?
That's a great question, and one that we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive. It really is a question worth exploring. And, what we're seeing in these sources is that the path of Erfan, it's open to anyone, but
there are definitely some challenges that make it rare to achieve.
yeah, one that really stands out, especially in our modern world, is this obsession with material possessions and status.
Oh, absolutely. Our whole society is built around acquiring more, achieving more, proving our worth through external stuff.
It's exhausting.
It is. How can we even begin to cultivate inner peace and unity when we're constantly striving for more?
The lecture makes an important point, though. It's not about rejecting the world entirely or material possessions. It's about our relationship to them.
So we don't have to become like ascetics or anything.
It's about finding that balance between engaging with the world and not letting it consume us.
So we can still enjoy those things.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't let them define us.
Exactly. They're part of the experience of life.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't be the source of our happiness.
Or our identity.
Right. And this ties into another challenge. The sources talk about
What's that?
fear and anxiety.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one these days.
It's everywhere, isn't it? We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we're not good enough, not safe enough, not doing enough.
It's like we're always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And this constant fear. It goes against everything Erfan stands for.
Right. Because the Arif is free from fear and sorrow.
Exactly. Erfan points to a different way of being.
But how do we even begin to break free from that fear? It feels so ingrained in everything.
The sources suggest that a lot of it comes from lack of trust.
Lack of trust.
In ourselves and the world around us. Ultimately in the divine order of things.
When we're afraid, it's hard to have faith in anything.
And Erfan is all about cultivating that trust. Recognizing that there's a force greater than ourselves at work.
So we can surrender to that force without losing ourselves.
Right. It's about letting go of the need to control everything, embracing uncertainty with faith.
And acceptance.
And that faith, that trust, it's what liberates us from fear.
It allows us to experience that deep peace that the Arif embodies.
It's not about pretending that challenges don't exist. It's about facing them with the trust that we're not alone.
And that things will work out as they should.
It's like the difference between white-knuckling our way through life
versus moving with grace and ease.
Trusting that we're supported, even when things are tough.
So Erfan isn't about becoming some kind of superhuman.
It's about tapping into the wisdom and peace that's already within us.
Remembering who we truly are.
And aligning our lives with that truth.
So if this path is truly open to all of us, what's holding so many of us back?
Well, according to these sources, one of the biggest obstacles is the ego.
The ego. It's like the ultimate villain of the spiritual journey.
It is a tough one. The ego is all about separation.
Separating us from each other, from the world, from the divine.
It's that voice in our head that's always comparing, judging, vying for attention.
It thrives on our insecurity.
And it loves Kathrat, that sense of multiplicity and separateness. It needs those distinctions to maintain its sense of self.
So basically, the ego is the opposite of everything Erfan is about.
It's the ultimate roadblock to unity.
But we can overcome it.
The sources offer some hope. They suggest that the ego isn't something to be destroyed, it's something to be transcended.
Transcended. How do we do that?
Erfan teaches that the ego isn't our true self.
Okay.
It's a construct, a collection of beliefs and identities that we've built up over time.
So we can deconstruct it.
Exactly. And that can be a challenge, but it's also incredibly liberating.
Because as the ego dissolves, so does the fear, the anxiety, the sense of separation.
It's like stepping out of a cramped, dark room into the vastness of the universe.
I like that analogy, that sense of limitlessness.
That's what Erfan is all about. Recognizing that we're not confined by the limitations of our ego.
That we're part of something much greater.
That connects us all.
And that connection leads to the peace and fulfillment that the Erf embodies.
Exactly. But this journey of transcending the ego, it's not without its challenges.
Like what?
One of the biggest ones the sources talk about is the influence of negativity.
Oh, I think we're all familiar with that.
It's everywhere. The news, social media.
Even our own thoughts sometimes.
It's easy to get swept up in it and lose sight of the good.
And negativity is contagious. It spreads from person to person.
Creating this cycle of fear, anger, and despair.
It can be so toxic for our well-being and our spiritual growth.
Remember, the Arif is filled with joy, not negativity.
So how do we protect ourselves from all that negativity without completely shutting ourselves off from the world?
The sources suggest being mindful of the information we consume.
Our media diet.
Exactly. We have more control over that than we realize. If something is constantly bringing us down,
Maybe it's time to step away.
it's about being intentional with what we allow into our minds and hearts.
And what about the negativity that comes from within? Our own thoughts and emotions.
We can be our own worst enemies sometimes.
That's for sure.
But Erfan teaches that we have a choice in how we respond to those negative thoughts and feelings. We can choose to observe them without judgment, let them pass.
It's like we're not our thoughts. We're the awareness that's observing those thoughts.
And that realization gives us the power to choose how we want to feel, how we want to respond.
It's about taking responsibility,
For our thoughts, our emotions, our actions.
which ultimately leads to freedom.
And empowerment.
And that empowerment allows us to move through the world with more purpose,
And intentionality.
making choices that align with our highest good.
And the good of all beings.
Because we're not just individuals striving for enlightenment,
We're interconnected parts of this web of life.
but our actions have an impact on the whole web.
And that interconnectedness,
Yeah.
that's what Erfan is all about.
As we move into the final part of our deep dives, we'll explore some practical practices and principles that can help us navigate this path.
With more clarity and purpose.
It really does. And as we continue exploring Erfan, I'm curious to learn more about those practical steps. The things we can do to cultivate this sense of unity in our everyday lives. We talked about seeking guidance, connecting with nature and art, performing good deeds. Are there any other practices that the sources emphasize?
One that comes up a lot is gratitude.
Gratitude. That makes sense. When we're focused on what we're grateful for, it's harder to get caught up in negativity.
Exactly. Gratitude. It's like an antidote to that constant wanting more.
Right.
It shifts our focus from what we lack to what we already have.
It's about appreciating the blessings in our lives, big and small, even when things are tough.
And that appreciation, that thankfulness, it opens us up to a deeper connection with the divine. And the more we practice gratitude, the more we realize those blessings are everywhere.
They really are.
In the warmth of the sun, the laughter of loved ones, the beauty of a sunset, seeing the magic in every moment.
And that shift in perspective, that sense of wonder, it's a big part of Erfan, isn't it?
It is. It's about reconnecting with that childlike curiosity, that appreciation for the beauty and mystery of life.
Like seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Exactly. And we can cultivate that sense of wonder through practices like meditation and mindfulness.
So quieting the mind, focusing on the breath, being present in the moment.
Exactly. And these practices, they're not just about relaxation, although that's a nice bonus.
Yeah.
They're about cultivating a deeper connection with ourselves and with that divine presence that permeates all things.
So Erfan, it's not just a destination. It's a way of life.
It is.
It's about bringing awareness, intentionality, gratitude to everything we do.
Cultivating a sense of wonder, appreciating the present moment.
And trusting in that divine order, even when we don't understand it.
You've got it. It's about recognizing that we're not alone on this journey.
We have guidance from the divine, from the wisdom traditions, from each other,
We're all part of this tapestry of life, interconnected.
essential to the whole.
And the more we embody these principles of Erfan, the more we contribute to its beauty and harmony.
It's an inspiring vision. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Erfan, I'm left with this question. If each of us is a unique expression of the divine, a thread in this magnificent tapestry, what kind of thread are you weaving? What colors are you bringing to this grand design?
That's a beautiful question. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that and to continue your own explorations of Erfan.